2-wheeler ஓட்டினா காலேஜ் 2-wheelerல வந்துட்டு போனாங்களா அவங்க ஏதாவது எமர்ஜென்சி? நீங்க 2-wheeler ஓட்டுறாங்க?
ஆமா, நானும் ஓட்டுவேன் பிரசாத் 2-wheeler.
நீங்க ஓட்டுவீங்க மேம்? நீங்க கார் ஓட்டுவீங்களா?
கார் ஓட்டுறேன்.
வாவ். என்ன வண்டி வச்சிருக்கீங்க?
ஆனா இங்க ஓட்டவே விடலைங்க. ஒரு நிமிஷம் மேம், நான் சொல்லுங்க சார். மியூட் ஆன் கொடுத்துட்டேன் சார். ஓகே, எல்லாருக்கும் மியூட் ஆன் கொடுத்துட்டேன். இப்போ வீடியோ யாரும் ஆன் பண்ணிட்டாங்கன்னா நான் ஸ்க்ரீன்ஷாட் கொடுத்தேன். சொல்லுங்க சார். ஓகே சார், லிங்க் கொடுத்துருக்கீங்க, பார்ப்பேன் சார். கண்டிப்பாக சார். கண்டுபிடிக்கிறேன். தண்ணி குடிச்சிட்டு இருந்தாரு. இப்போ எடுங்க. கேட்டாங்கன்னா கொடுக்கலாம். அடுத்தது வந்து பேசணும், அவங்க அன்மியூட் எடுத்துட்டு பேசுங்க. நான் இங்கே தான் இருக்கேன். ஏதோ வந்துருக்கேன். பேசுறாங்க. எம்பிஏ மேம் ஃபோன் பண்ணாங்க. ஒரே இங்கே தான் நிற்கிறேன். யார் பேசணுமோ அவங்க அன்மியூட் பண்ணிட்டு பேச முடியும். யார் பேச போகிறாங்க? நீங்கள் பேசுறீங்களா? நீங்கள் இதில் தானே பேசுகிறீங்க, இந்த சிஸ்டம்ல. சொல்லுங்க சார், சொல்லுங்க சார்.
Yes, am I audible? Okay, sir. Okay. So very good morning to one and all present here. So nothing is impossible when you put your mind, heart, soul and sweet into it. It's my great pleasure to start this occasion by welcoming all. Hearty welcome to our distinguished resource person and dear colleagues, participants. On behalf of CSE department, I am delighted to welcome you all to the 2 days national level workshop on blockchain technology insights and its application conducted by CSE department in SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Vadapalani campus, Chennai. So I would like to welcome our respected Dean Sir, Dr. K. Durayvelu, Dean, SRM Institute of Science and Technology. Even at his absence to this program, he sent his good wishes, which will always be our driving force to achieve a higher level success. So I would like to welcome our beloved HOD, Dr. S. Prasanna Devi Madam, Head, CSE Department of Institute of Science and Technology, Vadapalani campus, Chennai. I would like to welcome our resource person, Mr. Saro Velrajan, Chief Strategy Officer, Chennai, Tamil Nadu. Welcome, sir. I am delighted to welcome the participants from industries, faculty members, various colleges and research scholars, and technical and non-technical staff, and my dear students, to to this magnificent 2 days national level workshop on blockchain technology insights and its application program in SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Chennai. So actually the main objective of conducting this workshop is to provide the industry institute interaction on current technologies and to provide research directions to the faculty members and research scholars and students. So SRM Institute of Science and Technology promoting higher level education and always focuses on refining the knowledge and promoting students to a standard level of learning and a continuous research activities. So through the workshop, the participant will have the opportunity to learn, update, and sharpen the latest cutting edge technology and its application. So always new technologies represent advances, better way to update and refresh our significant ideas. So it explains the current need of industry, where the gaps in our knowledge are to be improvised. So what needs are there to enhance ourselves to adopt the new innovations. So today it's our great privilege to introduce our resource person, Mr. Saru Velrajan sir, Chief Strategy Officer to everyone. Mr. Saru Velrajan sir works for Hincock India as a Chief Strategy Officer. He has 20 plus years of experience in networking technologies, working for leading companies such as Verizon, Cisco System, and Ericsson, and Juniper's Networks. He specializes in the technologies such as software-defined network and network virtualization and edge computing and 5G and IoT. So Mr. Saru is the author of book An Introduction to 5G Wireless. Mr. Saru sir has an MBA in Technology Management from the University of Phoenix. He had held several roles in product engineering, marketing, and product management. Mr. Saru is a member of Toastmaster International, where he helps members to develop their communication and leadership skills. And today we have a sound professional and resource person is here to deliver about the role of blockchain in wireless networks. So I request our participants to making use of this opportunity to interact with the more queries and flourish your ideas, experience in future. So I'm sure that this 2 days national level workshop on blockchain technology, insights and its applications program will makes you able to familiar with the concept of blockchain technology, and you will have a stimulating, interesting session making use of this opportunity to create, develop, and flourish your ideas in future. So once again, welcome you all and wish you all success. Now I call upon Mr. Saru Velrajan sir to handle the session.
Thank you, ma'am, for that wonderful introduction. Let me do a screen share. Hope all of you are able to see my screen. Good. I welcome all of you to today's first seminar on blockchain. What I'm going to cover in the next 1.5 hours is to help you understand the role of blockchain technologies in IoT networks. So IoT as well as blockchain are hot technologies in the industry today, and each of them, when the power of these technologies are combined, they provide a lot of benefits and also enable several use cases in the industry. So how I have structured the session is, for the first 30 minutes, I'm going to help you understand what blockchain is, because I see a diverse set of faculty members. So I'll bring you up to speed on blockchain technologies. Then we look at IoT architecture and how blockchain impacts IoT. Then towards the end, we'll spend a good amount of time in understanding the various use cases enabled by blockchain in IoT networks. I'll also share with you some of the platforms that are available to play with blockchain towards the end. With that, let's get started. So diving right into the topic, what is blockchain? Blockchain is a buzzword that is going around in the industry for at least the last 4 or 5 years. And right now it has reached a stage where there is a lot more traction. Historically, blockchain was adopted as a technology for digital currencies when they came up with this concept called Bitcoin. a lot of folks have started using mobile applications. And for example, mobile games is gaining a lot more popularity. And each player wins a lot of points, and the points are converted into currencies. But what can you do with the currency? You cannot buy anything with that currency. So that's where Bitcoin gained prominence because it enabled people who are accumulating points to use those points to purchase items online. But now, in the last 5 years, the technology has evolved and it has started catering to other market segments. Specifically, blockchain has started getting into financial segments, in networking technologies. It has gone into supply chain. There are several industries where blockchain has penetrated. So simply put, blockchain is a digital, decentralized ledger which maintains a record of all transactions that happen over a peer-to-peer network. Some of the keywords to focus here are number one, digital, which means it is relevant only in the online world, in the web-enabled world. And number two, it's decentralized. The term decentralized is very critical because people confuse this often with distributed. While blockchain is also a distributed technology, the term decentralized means no single party controls the infrastructure. So it is the authority is distributed among the people who are participating in the blockchain network. And I'll help you understand it in the subsequent slide. But decentralized means there is no single decision maker. For example, Visa and MasterCard are some of the prominent players in the credit card industry. Whenever you are making a purchase using a credit card, it goes to that clearing house. So Visa and MasterCard comes into play whenever you are making a digital transaction, whether using a debit card or your credit card. So even if you're using your debit card in the ATM, those transactions are validated by Visa and MasterCard before even the banks allow you to withdraw money. So there is some authority that is governing in today's financial world, but blockchain is more of a decentralized ledger, which means there's no single authority who controls everything, and that enables peer-to-peer transactions. For you to visualize peer-to-peer transactions, Google Pay using Paytm is a good example. So using Google Pay, you can transfer money to another person with just a click of a button. Of course, in Google Pay has not used blockchain, so they are still going through the banks to make those digital transactions. But in a world where blockchain is widely adopted, you can make peer-to-peer transactions without even going through your bank. So that's what blockchain is. It's a digital decentralized ledger which maintains a record of all transactions that happen in a peer-to-peer network. So how does blockchain work? Let's look at the steps involved. So whenever you are doing a transaction using blockchain, what are the various steps involved? The first step, you are requesting a transaction. So for you to understand this better, I'll give you an example. Assume that you're walking into a car showroom and you have made a decision to purchase a car. So purchasing a car is that transaction that you are making in a car dealership. While you're making the transaction, look at the number of parties that are interested or related to the transaction. Number one, of course, the car dealership, you as a person is involved in the transaction. And number two, the car dealership is involved in the transaction because they are the one who's selling the car. And number three, if you are buying a loan, which is true in most cases, we all go for loans when we make big purchases. So when you are buying a car, you will go for a loan, and a bank has to be involved in clearing that loan. And number four, bank as well as car dealership would need some kind of identity. So you may be providing your PAN card. In fact, PAN card is mandatory today if you are making a big transaction. So you will be supplying your PAN card, which means the IT department will get involved in the transaction. And when you are buying a car, you will have to pay road tax and you have to register the car. So the local regional transport authority will be coming into play. So there are, and obviously you will have to buy insurance. So there will be an insurance provider who comes into play. So there are like 5 or 6 different entities that come together to make this transaction. So there are different players who are interested in the transaction. A simple purchasing account, right? So you are requesting a transaction which is purchasing account. Step number 2 is a block is created to represent the transaction. So in the case of purchasing a car, a block can be, for example, your interest to buy a car, which means a specific number, make, year of purchase, manufacturer, and then your PAN card details, which is your personal details, address proof, ID proof, the bank from which you are going to get the loan. So all these details, the region in which you are going to register, and how much the value of the car for registering with the insurance providers, all that will be part of the block which represent the transaction. That is step number 2. Now, the block sent to every node in the network. So the node, each node, for example, is the different entities that I talked about: the regional transport office, the insurance provider, the bank, the car dealership. So all of the income tax department, these stakeholders are representing a node in the blockchain network. So what do I mean by that? Each of them will have an IT system. They'll have some kind of a software probably running on the cloud or on-premise that will be participating in validating this transaction. So step number 4 is nodes in the network validate the transaction. So they get the details and they'll say, okay, this is a valid information and I'm authorizing this or I'm not authorizing this. So the nodes have to validate the transaction before the transaction is made. Then after the transaction is made, the block is added to the existing blockchain. So each of them participate in this network chain. So they all update their own respective ledgers. One unique property of blockchain is the same information is stored in multiple locations, in multiple ledgers. So people cannot just tamper or hack into the net. So there is duplicate information maintained in a number of places. So you cannot go back and change something. So whenever you have to make a change, you can open and create a new block to represent the change, but you cannot go back and change the old block that was created, right? So a block is added to the existing blockchain and the transaction is considered as complete. So these are the different steps that are involved in the blockchain network. So this is how the blockchain transaction, it's very simple. It's not like rocket science, it's very simple. There are 6 steps involved, and this happens irrespective of the transfer you do using blockchain. For example, you are transferring money from one person to another person, or you are doing an online digital currency transfer, you are doing some kind of transaction in the network. For example, you might have subscribed for a bandwidth of 10 Mbps from your broadband service provider. But what is the guarantee that 10 Mbps is provided to you all the times throughout the day, 24 by 7? Today, you don't have any mechanism to validate whether the internet service provider assured you 10 Mbps bandwidth throughout the day. Unfortunately, you are paying that service, but there is no guarantee by which, unless you are using the internet all the times, you cannot verify whether the vendor really provided 10 Mbps bandwidth to you 24 by 7. But in a blockchain-enabled world, the vendor is supposed to benchmark or record the transaction, so record the speed that they are providing to you every probably 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So there is a ledger where you can go and check what was the speed that was allotted to you and what speed did they support for you at different timestamps throughout the day, right? So that's how, and it provides a lot of benefits for customers as well as the folks who are providing that infrastructure. So this is how blockchain works. So with this understanding, let's look at how blockchain has evolved over a period of time. So there are 4 different versions of blockchain. So blockchain has evolved over 4-5 years, and the initial version is just Bitcoin currency. So Bitcoin gained a lot of prominence. In fact, a lot of countries have started officially supporting Bitcoins, but they have not integrated Bitcoin with their current banking. So you cannot convert a Bitcoin into a dollar or a rupee. So there's a separate network for Bitcoin. So blockchain 1.0 is for just managing currencies, digital currency transactions. Blockchain 2.0 is focused on contracts. In fact, this is a significant game changer for blockchain as well as for the various use cases enabled by blockchain. Smart contracts allow you to establish a contract with somebody. A good example is you are buying something from somebody or you're selling something to somebody. Remember, blockchain is a peer-to-peer network, which means you are making transactions with another person. There's no entity in between. So in a blockchain 2.0 world, you can have blockchain smart contracts where you say, I am ready to pay $10 to this person if the person sends me a mobile phone or a mobile device. Or you can say, if I win this particular game, then the game service provider will transfer $10 to me. So that is an example of smart contract. Or in a broader world, for example, you are purchasing a property. In US, they have this service called escrow. So they don't allow the buyer to see all of your personal information. So they hand over the personal information to a central entity called escrow. And the escrow maintains all the contracts with the buyer as well as the seller, both the sides. So that is an example of smart contract where there is a third party that comes in between, holds the confidential information from buyer as well as seller. And once the transaction is complete, the role of escrow goes off. So here, blockchain 2.0 allows you to specify contracts for transactions. You will understand this better as I give you more examples on use cases in the subsequent slide. Blockchain 3.0 enabled decentralized applications. Remember, Bitcoin is a service provider who's providing a particular form of currency, and it is valid only in the Bitcoin network. So it's like a public infrastructure, and it is shared by a lot of people. Now, what happens because of this is when blockchain evolved and when it started supporting use cases other than digital currencies, there is a need for a variety of applications. For example, you can pay for a Ola ride using your app, using a Bitcoin, or you can do identity verification of people using blockchain. You you don't have to share any of your bank details or you don't have to share any of your personal details. You can say my blockchain identity is this. Go and validate that my address proof, mobile number, email, all that is valid, right? A good example is Google login. Today, whenever you go to a website, you don't have to create a username and password every time you go to a new website. What you can do is you can ask that website to validate your identity with Google. So they'll provide Google or Facebook login option. So you can use Google login option to sign in to a third-party website. So this is an example of identity verification. So blockchain 3.0 allowed vendors, service providers to have decentralized applications beyond digital currencies for doing identity management, helping in supply chain management. So there is a growth in the number of decentralized applications in blockchain 3.0. We are now in blockchain 4.0, where industries have seriously started adopting blockchain. So it is not anymore a hot topic or a buzzword. There are instances where industry is adopting blockchain itself. So these are the different stages of evolution of blockchain technology, right from digital currencies to smart contracts to decentralized applications to industry applications. I'll show you a short video. If you are not able to hear the audio, unmute and please speak. I'm monitoring the chat window. I don't know if there is any message on the chat window. Okay, good. So I'll play a video and you can watch that video and then we can come back and resume the session.
Blockchain is shorthand for a whole suite of distributed ledger technologies that can be programmed to record and track anything of value, from financial transactions to medical records or even land titles. You might be thinking, we already have processes in place to track data. What's so special about blockchain? Let's break down the reasons why blockchain technology stands to revolutionize the way we interact with each other. Reason number one, the way it tracks and stores data. Blockchain stores information in batches called blocks that are linked together in a chronological fashion to form a continuous line, metaphorically, a chain of blocks. If you make a change to the information recorded in a particular block, you don't rewrite it. Instead, the change is stored in a new block showing that X changed to Y at a particular date and time. Sound familiar? That's because blockchain is based on the centuries-old method of the general financial ledger. It's a non-destructive way to track data changes over time. Here's one example. Let's say there was a dispute between Anne and her brother Steve over who owns a piece of land that's been in the family for years. Because blockchain technology uses the ledger method, there is an entry in the ledger showing that Adam first owned the property in 1900. When Adam sold the property to Dave in 1930, a new entry was made in the ledger, and so on. Every change of ownership of this property is represented by a new entry in the ledger, right up until Anne bought it from their father in 2007. Anne is the current owner, and we can see that history in the ledger. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Unlike the age-old ledger method, originally a book, then a database file stored on a single system, blockchain was designed to be decentralized and distributed across a large network of computers. This decentralizing of information reduces the ability for data tampering and brings us to the second factor that makes blockchain unique. It creates trust in the data. Before a block can be added to the chain, a few things have to happen. First, a cryptographic puzzle must be solved, thus creating the block. The computer that solves the puzzle shares the solution to all of the other computers on the network. This is called proof of work. The network will then verify this proof of work, and if correct, the block will be added to the chain. The combination of these complex math puzzles and verification by many computers ensures that we can trust each and every block on the chain. Because the network does the trust building for us, we now have the opportunity to interact directly with our data in real time. And that brings us to the third reason blockchain technology is such a game changer. No more intermediaries. Currently, when doing business with one another, we don't show the other person our financial or business records. Instead, we rely on trusted intermediaries, such as a bank or lawyer, to view our records and keep that information confidential. These intermediaries build trust between the parties and are able to verify, for example, that yes, Anne is the rightful owner of this land. This approach limits exposure and risk, but also adds another step to the exchange, which means more time and money spent. If Anne's land title information was stored in a blockchain, she could cut out the middleman, her lawyer, who would ordinarily confirm her information with Steve. As we now know, all blocks added to the chain have been verified to be true and can't be tampered with. So Anne can simply show Steve her land title information secured on the blockchain. Anne would save considerable time and money by cutting out the middleman. This type of trusted peer-to-peer interaction with our data can revolutionize the way we access, verify, and transact with one another. And because
So let's do a quick interaction on the chat window. So what did you learn from this short video clipping? You can type your responses in the chat window or you can unmute and speak. So there are three significant aspects of blockchain that was covered in this video. So what are the messages from this short video? You can type your responses in the chat window or you can unmute and speak. Or something that you have learned about blockchain in the last probably 20 minutes. What is blockchain, right? So there are a few characteristics of blockchain. What are the characteristics that were covered either in the video or in the first 20 minutes of the segment? Probably there is a starting trouble. Let's see who's going to type the first response. What is blockchain? or one of the characteristics of blockchain? Any one characteristic of blockchain can be typed in the chat window. Fantastic.
Hello.
So let's give a round of applause to the first person, Mr. Vigneshwaran Pandi. It's a distributed ledger. So that's correct. It's a distributed ledger. The same information is stored in multiple places. Good. So I heard one more person on the audio feed.
Yeah, hello. Good morning, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Yeah, blockchain is a decentralized ledger technology, which is immutable in nature and which can be used to remove the intermediary.
Super. So it's a immutable. It means you cannot go back and change. That is very important. And there is no intermediary. It is very. It's a great differentiator when compared to some of the other digital technologies that allow you to do online transactions. Great. Then Abhirami ma'am said it's tamper-proof. You cannot go and overwrite something without multiple entities approving that transaction. So, for example, in today's world, you may say bank networks getting hacked or credit card details getting hacked and shared in public domain. But in a blockchain-enabled world, you cannot hack anything because number one, all the information is encrypted and stored. And number two, you need a cryptographic key to even participate in the blockchain network. And number three, the information, the transaction has to be approved by multiple entities for it to be added to the ledger. So it's a tamper-proof technology. Fantastic. And then Jeevanandam sir, using blockchain, there is no need for intermediary for any trusted transaction. Fantastic, right? So there's no need for any middleman, which means there is also some reduction in the cost. For example, today, whatever online transaction that you are making using your credit card, or even an in-person transaction that you are making using your credit card, there is a 1%, 2% commission that goes to Visa and MasterCard. And who pays for that commission? It's you or it's us. So that 1%, 2% will be saved when we start using blockchain for our transactions. So let's continue the session. Good. So I see folks following it. There are two types of blockchain. Number one, there's a public blockchain. Public blockchain is also called as permissionless blockchain. What does that mean? Permissionless blockchain means anybody can go and participate in that blockchain network. You can read and write information, but the drawback here is since anybody can go and participate in the network, there is the amount of trust involved is very low. Where can public blockchain be of help? A good example again can be Google Pay. For those of you who have used Google Pay, it's somewhat similar to a public blockchain. It's not using blockchain today, but it's somewhat similar, where anybody can go and search for your mobile number and send some money to you using the mobile number. You cannot prevent it. On the contrary, if somebody has to send money to you using your bank account directly, they need a lot of information like your bank account number, the bank's IFSC code, and the bank location. So all of that is needed for them to transfer money to you using your bank account. But in a Google Pay world, if the other person has a Google Pay and you have a Google Pay, you are indirectly letting others to know your mobile number as well as send money to you, right? So in a public blockchain world, any institution can participate and the information is available to everybody as far as they can validate their identity. For example, the car dealership example that I gave to you is an example of public blockchain where anybody can go and retrieve that information provided you authorize. I'm not saying public blockchain means information is not secure. The information is still secure in a public blockchain world. It will come to you for authorization. If somebody wants to know your credit score, somebody wants to know your mobile number, email ID, all of that, you have to still authenticate or authorize that particular transaction for other person to understand it, right? But all the information is available in public repositories. So that's public blockchain. The private blockchain is a good example, is also called permissioned blockchain, which means somebody has to, there is still a authority who manages the network. There are different participants in the network, but there is still some trust established in the network. A good example would be a blockchain network implemented within an enterprise. There are different information shared between different groups or business units within an enterprise, and some of them are confidential information. So, in a private blockchain, the enterprise provides some kind of a trusted infrastructure for you to share information. Or a good example would be IoT-enabled network. In an IoT-enabled network, there is a central entity that is governing that network. So, the sensors or the participants in the IoT network that who's generating the data, there is a guarantee that it's in a very controlled environment and it doesn't share with anybody and everybody. So that's an example of a private blockchain. It is called as permissioned blockchain. Anybody who wants to enter into the private blockchain network, they have to apply for it, and their entry has to be approved for them to participate. In public chain, blockchain, even if you are, there is no need for any approval for you to participate in that network. So it's like the level of trust is very low in a public blockchain versus a private blockchain. There are two types of roles and node plays in a blockchain network. You can be a member node, which means you have just subscribed to the network and you can initiate and receive transaction. Going back to my car dealership example, you are initiating or you are receiving transaction as a customer. Or you can be a validated node, which means you can initiate, receive, as well as you can validate transactions. RTO, income tax department, all of them will play a validator node, whereas you as a customer will play the role of a member node. So that's a difference between public and private blockchain. Bitcoin, for example, is a public blockchain. Anybody can play a game and win Bitcoin currencies, and you can use that Bitcoin currency in the public network. So Bitcoin is a very popular public blockchain network. So let's get into one more level of detail. So for you to visualize what a block is, how the block information is created. So this is an example of how the blocks are structured. As you can see, there are distinct blocks, and each of those blocks has some information, and then so at the minimum there is information about the previous hash. Like I said, all information is cryptographically encrypted and stored in a block network, in a blockchain network, and they are stored as hash. So each block has a pointer to the previous block. So that's how the blocks are interlinked. For you to visualize, probably it looks like a linked list, but it's not a linked list. So there are hashes computed, and those hash is nothing but information that points to the previous block that is related to this blockchain. Right? So there's previous hash related information. We see the video where there is a real estate transaction going on, and the ledger contains information related to who purchased that property, in which year, what is their personal information, and who did they sell to in which year, and the personal information of the buyer of the property. So it has a history of all the transactions that happened on that particular property. So each of those transactions can be visualized as a block. When I say transaction, that can be multiple smaller transactions or minor transactions. There's a major transaction, there's a bunch of minor transactions, and all of them are represented as a hash. Going back to my car purchase example, where purchasing a car is a large transaction that you are making, but there are other transactions like PAN card verification, informing the RTO about your registration number for the car, or informing the dealership of the car that you want, the color of the car that you want, the value of the car, all of that, right? They are all still hash information. So in this slide, each of the minor transactions, TX0, TX1, TX2, TX3, all of them are in turn converted into a hash. And there is another hash computed based on the link level hash information, 0 and hash 1. So there is another level of hash that is computed, that's called hash 01. and all of them are interlinked by the root node. So every block will have a root node which will have the links to the hash tree. Okay, so they call it as Merkle tree, MERKEL, Merkle tree. So hash tree is nothing but a Merkle tree. So there is a root information which is stored in the block, and that root has pointers to the hashes, and each of those hashes ultimately point to the unique transaction that was made. So there is timestamp information so that you know at which chronological time frame the transaction happened. So there is a lot of valuable information that is stored in blockchain in a block. So it's very apt for accounting in any application. So there is accounting done in any application, not just financial applications, but for example, an inventory management application in the supply chain network, or in the networking world, we have a concept called telemetry. How much CPU is being used, how much memory is being consumed, how much storage is being used at different instances. The example that I gave about a service provider keeping track of the bandwidth that they supported at different point in time. All of those information are transactions, and you can convert the transaction into a hash, and you can store that hash in as part of the blockchain. So there is history of the different blocks that are created at different point in time. So nonce, I want to talk about the nonce also, because nonce holds a great significance here. Nonce is nothing but just a random number which is used for encrypting or converting the transaction into a hash form. So nonce is very critical, and the nonce keeps it's a random number, so nobody can like really guess that number and decrypt that, other than the person who really encrypted that, because they have a key with them, so they know what that information is. So nobody can really hack into that. Even if they hack into one block, for them to get the entire picture, they have to like redo that for every block, right? So it's very hard to hack into a blockchain network. So one of the characteristics of blockchain, somebody rightly said, it's immutable, right? So that's the right terminology to use for representing the characteristics, where you cannot go and change what any of the blocks that is stored in the blockchain network. It's immutable. It's irreversible, right? And it's decentralized, which means there is no single decision-making authority. The decision-making power is distributed to a lot of people. Because it's a peer-to-peer world, so the decision-making is decentralized. The storage is distributed, which means the same block information is stored in multiple ledgers. The decision that you took on purchasing a car, that information is now available in the RTO ledger. It's available with the insurance company register. It's available with the car dealership ledger. So the information is stored and replicated in different places. So it's distributed. It's traceable and auditable because of the timestamp and because of the sequence in which the blocks are interlinked. You can easily trace and audit that information. So because of this aspect, it has a lot of interest in the financial domain, but it also has percolated to other industries today. It's secure. Like I said, it's very hard to crack or tamper into a blockchain network. So it's a very secure form of storing and sharing information. Storing information in a very secure manner is very easy, but sharing the information in a secure manner is very difficult. And that's what blockchain provides for the networking industry. Because in the networking industry, we create a lot of data. For example, an IoT network creates a lot of data because there are so many sensors generating analytics and small chunks of information at the time, and they have to be securely transferred and shared with the rest of the world. So blockchain provides a great platform for us for that. And it's consensus based, which means there has to be multiple parties who have to approve the transaction for the transaction to be added as a block in the blockchain network. So all of them have to share their consensus for the block to be added to the blockchain network. So these are the different characteristics of blockchain. It's immutable, it's decentralized, its storage is distributed, the ledger is maintained in multiple places, it's auditable, it's very secure, it's consensus based. And all of these characteristics make blockchain a very compelling technology for several industries to. Towards the end, I'll show you the maturity of blockchain as well as the adoption of blockchain across different verticals. You'll be amazed by that information. So it's a research from Gartner, a leading research industry. So all of these characteristics make it a very compelling technology for adoption in different industry verticals. So what are some of the benefits? There's no middleman. The cost obviously goes down. Remember, I said Visa and MasterCard charges 1%, 2% service charge for clearing all the digital transactions. But in a blockchain-enabled world, since it's peer-to-peer, the cost gets lowered. So you may obviously think in a peer-to-peer world that there is no RBI, there is no government. How is the information going to be tracked? I don't have to pay income tax for all the money that I'm transacting via the blockchain network. While there is no authority who is like enabling the transaction, there will still be accounting. So, for example, your income tax officials will be part of the blockchain network where they are getting information about the transactions that you are making online. So there will still be governance involved, but there is no cost involved for the middleman who is facilitating these transactions. The transactions are faster in nature because of the power of cloud as well as because it's a distributed network. The transactions are faster. Today, if you have to transfer money from one person to another, obviously with IMPS and NEFT, there's a lot more speed today. But in the good old days, you'll have to wait for a couple of days for the transaction to. For example, today, if you want to make an international money transfer, you can do just like that. It's like multiple intermediaries for you to transfer money from India to US, for example. So those transactions still are taking a lot of time because there are intermediaries. But using blockchain, since it's peer-to-peer, the transactions become very fast. It's traceable, so it's easy to do accounting. And since it's secure, the number of hacks, for example, till date, there is no hacker who has penetrated into the Bitcoin network. So it's absolutely tamper-proof. So it's easy to secure identities. Today, now you go to Google and search for your email. Probably there are 10 locations where your email ID is available or your phone number is available. Your email ID and phone number is more than enough to hack into your mail account as well as get into your bank account if somebody really wants to penetrate bank account and see what you've done. But in a blockchain-enabled world, all information is stored using a cryptographic key. So it's very hard to tamper into it. So identity, securing your identity becomes very easy. With that, let's take a short moment to test your understanding. So what I'm going to do is share with you a link on the chat window. And I want you to quickly take this quiz before we get into the next part of the section, right? Open your chat window. There is a link. I'm not going to grade you, and it is anonymous. So nobody other than you will know your score. So click on the link and start taking the test. You're able to open the quiz? Can I hear a yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you. That gives me comfort. Multiple choice quiz, so it's easy for you to attend. Google says I have already received 2 responses. There's one I already took once, so there's one response from me. So 2 more folks have submitted. Let's see how many people out of the 65 out of 63 people that we have here are responding. Six responses so far. 7 out of 64. Wow, jump 10. Well, responses. Good progress. This also helps me to understand how many people are really engaged in the session. So 20 responses, good show. Probably will stop when we reach 40 count. 23. So, there's a pause after 24, 25. 6. Oh, we have 55 participants. So we should be easily able to get to 40. 28. Anybody having difficulty in opening the link? Let me know. It's anonymous poll, which means your personal details are collected. Sorry, I'm not able to hear. Did anyone have a problem in accepting the link? Okay, 31 responses. 32. 8 more to go. Come on, you can do it. 32. 33. So roughly halfway milestone. So we have 67 participants, including me, and we are at 34 right now. 35. 36. Hopefully the same person is not clicking again and responding back. Okay, so we'll stop here and review the responses, right? So let's find out. Blockchain uses a distributed ledger, and 78.9%. So roughly 80% of the folks have got it right. So we were already good. Some feel that the distributed centralized ledger, which means I've not done a good job with those 6 people. Which data structure does a blockchain use? Hash. Okay. 71% of the folks have got it right. Still think it's linked list. Very good. Probably they looked at the graphic and listened to my audio track. 72%. Which of these are characteristics of a blockchain? Vector-based, one person thought it's vector-based. Distributed, decentralized, consensus-based. Okay, good. Uses IPsec protocol. Probably you can use IPsec protocol, but that is outside of the scope of what blockchain brings as a characteristic. Which of the following statements is true? Public blockchains are permissionless, and private blockchains are permission. So those are the true statements. Which of the following statements are true? Blockchain is useful only for Bitcoins. Blockchain 4.0 is for industrial applications, which is right. Blockchain 2.0 is not about Bitcoins. Blockchain 2.0 is about smart contracts. Half the folks have got it right. Blockchain 3.0 is about centralized applications. I didn't say that. Okay. Oh, so 42 people have responded. So I'm going to give a round. And let's resume the session now. Let's look at the impact of blockchain on IoT networks. Good. So for you to have a quick understanding about IoT, I have one slide that explains about IoT system architecture. Then we can look at the characteristics of blockchain which is impacting IoT, or how blockchain solves some of the problems in an IoT network. Then I'll walk you through the use cases. There are like 5 use cases that I've identified. I'll walk you through them. And by the end of walking through those use cases, you will have a fair understanding of the impact of blockchain on IoT enablement. So IoT architecture has a bunch of layers. The starting layer is the devices. You have device. Now most devices are digital enabled, which means they can communicate with applications running on the cloud, or they can communicate with some applications running on a gateway near to you. For example, a surveillance camera is sending feeds to the cloud. You can watch what is happening in your home, though you are in a college or a university. So surveillance cameras transmit live feed because of digital enabled infrastructure. They are sending live feeds to your mobile device or to your mobile application. There is a Fitbit or health gadgets that are getting evidence today, which is collecting the pulse, the number of watts that you took on a particular day, the number of steps that you climbed on a given day, and those sensors are continuously sending information to your mobile phones or to an application that is running on the cloud. So somebody is able to track your health. And today we have what is called as autonomous cars. These are self-driving cars that go out in certain parts of the world. For example, Google is using their autonomous cars in Palo Alto, where their head office is based. There's no driver. These cars are going around in the streets along with the regular cars, and they are completely self-driven. Then you have industrial applications, for example, robotic arms which are assembling the cars. So these are the different devices that come into play in an IoT-enabled ecosystem, and each of these devices has some kind of a wireless sensor using which they are communicating information back into the larger network, to the internet or to the application that is running in the cloud. Then comes the communication layer, and there are different communication protocols and communication standards. See, is there something in the chat? Okay, so there's a different communication protocols that come into play, right from Bluetooth. Bluetooth is a very it's used for short range communication. Probably you can use communicate with a device within a small car. Okay, so it can communicate to devices within a few meters distant, Bluetooth, and it cannot transfer large amount of information. It can be used for probably exchanging a contact from one mobile phone to another mobile phone, or for downloading an audio ringtone from one device to another. So it's a good example of Bluetooth for IoT-enabled devices. You can measure temperature in a given room using a Bluetooth device. So that's Bluetooth. Short range, low, very small Mbps support, bandwidth or speed. Then comes Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi can cover your entire home, not just one room, but your entire home. And it has a relatively longer range compared to Bluetooth, and it can support several 100 Mbps. For example, it can support 10 Mbps, 20 Mbps, and even 100 Mbps Wi-Fi routers are there. Then comes LoRa. LoRa is again for low range communication. So it has it supports a couple of kilometers distance where IoT enabled device can be in a factory, and you can gather all the feeds from a central data center that is located at least a kilometer away. So LoRa supports a relatively longer range compared to Wi-Fi, and it also supports up to 1 Mbps speed. So 1 Mbps is more than adequate for many IoT-enabled devices. Then comes LTE-M. So LTE is long-term evolution, which is nothing but your 4G, but there is a M added to the LTE term, which means this range of communication, this radio frequency is for machine-to-machine communication. So the M stands for machine-to-machine communication, and LTE is a widely available network. So you communicate with entities that are like several tens and hundreds of kilometers away using LTE network. So LTE-M allows machine-to-machine communication. It supports up to 500 Mbps or 600 Mbps speed. So it is used very apt for example, a surveillance camera that is capturing the feed and transmitting over long distances, right? So that's the communication layer. Then comes the IoT edge. The IoT edge, as the name goes, is located at the edge of a network. And IoT edge has two distinct infrastructure. One is called an IoT gateway. The IoT gateway understands the information that is sent by the different devices that are there in the IoT network. For example, heart rate monitoring device, or in a healthcare, for example, in hospitals, they may not send nurses to collect heart rate or pulse every 1 hour. They'll be just putting a smart watch to the patient, and the smart watch continuously gathers the pulse information of the patient and sends it to a centralized gateway that is sitting in the data center within that particular hospital. So that's an example of an IoT gateway. Or in an industrial environment, the robotic arms are communicating with the IoT gateway to share the health of the robotic arms itself. For example, if there's friction, then it will impact the productivity or even the reliability of operations in the industry, right? So the robotic arm will be continuously sending health information of the robotic arm infrastructure to a centralized IoT gateway. And today there is an edge computing infrastructure that is deployed along with the IoT gateway, where you can centrally store all the analytics that is generated, all the data that is generated by each of these sensors are stored in the edge compute, and analytics are generated based on the data that is gathered from all these devices before they are transmitted to a central cloud. For example, there will be several GBs of information gathered from these devices that are there in the IoT-enabled network, and there will be all the information may not be sent to a centralized cloud. Many of them are stored locally. Analytics is generated, and then filtered information goes to the cloud. For example, a smart meter. Today, we have electric meters, and somebody comes to our home to note down the readings every 2 months. But in developed countries, they have what is called as smart meters. The smart meter automatically sends that information of the meter reading to the IoT gateway, and the compute that is closer to the IoT gateway will store all that information. And it will send information that is needed for generating the bill to the application that is running in the cloud. The application running in the cloud will do the billing for that particular customer. Okay? So that's the end-to-end IoT system architecture. It has a devices layer, it has a communication layer, different wireless communications, and then comes the edge infrastructure, where you have the IoT gateway, the edge compute, then it's the edge application that are hosted on the cloud. And all of these will be present in some form or the other for any IoT-enabled network. Now, why blockchain is very relevant for an IoT-enabled network? Number one, IoT network deals with a lot of data, lots and lots of data, because these sensors are continuously collecting data from the devices, be it a health monitoring device, a device that is monitoring operations in an industry, an autonomous car. For example, an autonomous car is going around the streets, and for it to go around the streets, it has to know the coordinates, the geographic location, the 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 bodies and the objects that are around it, right? There may be a lot of cars, there may be people walking or crossing the streets. So each of this information is some form of a data, and that data gets stored. And imagine there are like hundreds and thousands of cars going around in the community. Look at the amount of data that gets generated from each of these cars. They say a flight from US to India generates several terabytes worth of data, not just a map related information. So many sensors in the flight which generate several terabytes of information for one trip. Okay, so IoT data management is a very critical functionality of IoT network, and blockchain simplifies the management of data in IoT network. One one good thing that comes because of blockchain for an IoT network is the structure, the way in which the information is chained together and organized. You can go back and audit a particular information based on the audit trail that is available to you. An example that I gave where a service provider today cannot guarantee the speed that was offered to you at a given point in time. In an IoT enabled network, there is somebody who's continuously holding the speed that was made available to you as a customer. And that data is auditable, and it is stored as part of blockchain, and it is auditable. So blockchain simplifies the storage and retrieval of information in an IoT enabled network. Number two, IoT security. People are splitting their to enable security in an IoT network because most IoT networks are in public domain because of the nature of the IoT network. For example, if you walk into a shopping mall, there are sensors monitoring the temperature. There are sensors, there are surveillance cameras that are available in different places. So somebody can tamper and the surveillance camera feed. If somebody can tamper the temperature monitoring feed, or there you see Wi-Fi access points available in corridors in a shopping mall, so that the shops can use the centralized Wi-Fi infrastructure, right? So it's easy for somebody to tap into IoT-enabled network. So blockchain provides security for the data collected in an IoT network. So all the data that are collected by the sensors are number one encrypted, and number two they are stored in ledgers where multiple entities have to validate, give their consensus for the data that gets added to the blockchain. So there's added security. People cannot tamper into the IoT blockchain network without them being allowed. Probably a blockchain network within a shopping mall is a private blockchain network, and only authorized entity can participate in the blockchain network. So blockchain brings in security in an IoT-enabled network, and each of these can be research areas, for example. So data management in an IoT network or security in an IoT network. Each of these can be a research area for if there are graduate, if there are faculty members who are doing research in blockchain. Then comes smart contracts. What do we mean by smart contract in an IoT-enabled network? A vendor may say, my device has 99.9% availability, which means at least it has to rarely fail. Only through in a whole year, the device, a router or a Wi-Fi access point or a temperature sensor, temperature monitor can fail, can be brought down only for an or two. That's what 99.99% availability means. So when somebody guarantees that their device is available for 99.99%, then they are indirectly signing into a contract with the customer. So, or there is a contract, for example, 6 months warranty, which means any fault that happens within that 6 months period is serviced for free by the vendor who's providing the technology, right? So there are smart contracts that are maintained in the digital network also. Somebody may say, my device is available for 99.99%, which is a smart contract. And the vendor has to prove that their device was available 99.99% of the time. So they have to maintain information in the blockchain network to prove that claim. right? If somebody comes to you, for compliance reasons, if somebody files a case, they have to prove that the device was available 99%. Another form of smart contract is surveillance camera. Today we have sophisticated surveillance cameras where you upload information related to known thieves, known people who are like, for example, in police station they put pictures of people who are under search, or in railway station they put pictures of people who are known to commit a theft. So in a digital world, a surveillance camera has the capacity to find people in a shopping mall who are known to do notorious stuff in the shopping mall. So that's a smart contract where you can upload information related of people who are known to do harm to others, or who are known to commit a crime, and that legal information is uploaded into the surveillance system. And the surveillance camera, which is continuously gathering details of people who are in the shopping, can trigger an alert to the nearby policeman or somebody who's administrating security person. So in a financial world, it's easy to understand what a smart contract is. In a financial world, I pay $20 to you, and you are obligated to provide $20 worth of goods. Sorry. Hello. Okay. So that's a cross stack. Probably we should have put a smart contract here saying people should always be muted. They are not going to ask a question, right? So there can be different type of smart contracts that can be established between different entities in an IoT network. And each of those smart contract terms are part of the blockchain network. So they can be validated at different points in time, or you can even go back and check for auditing or complaints related pieces, right? So smart contract is an important aspect of a blockchain enabled IoT network. Obviously, the transactions become faster because of the adoption of blockchain, because the information is stored in a structured manner, and you clearly identify these are the 4 people who have to approve for this transaction to be stored into chain network. So there's no real need where all the transactions are approved by one entity, right? So which means you are there is congestion and the approval gets delayed. But in IoT blockchain enabled IoT network, the relevant data or information gets processed by only a few folks, so that the transactions are really faster. I'll give you examples in the subsequent slide when we are talking about supply chain management. So then comes scalability. It's easy to extend the blockchain-enabled IoT network. IoT itself is a very large network where several thousands or even millions of devices are participating today in IoT network. Imagine if you have to organize the data generated by the IoT network and make it available to a lot of people. So storing, retrieving, auditing all the data generated by an IoT network, you have to have a scalable infrastructure to do all of this. So blockchain provides a scalable infrastructure for you to do all of this. Okay. So now let's understand how blockchain is applied in different industry verticals where IoT is getting embraced. Okay. So that's what I'm going to cover in the next few slides. The use cases of uh, IoT network where blockchain plays a significant role. It either plays a role in data management, or providing security, or for smart contract, or for scaling the network where the transactions are quicker and you can add so many nodes, but still the performance is not impacted, right? So let's look at some of the use cases, key use cases enabled by blockchain. Today, IoT is embraced in supply chain management, utility management, or things like autonomous cars are very popular because of a major IoT use case. So, today what we are going to look at is supply chain management, smart parking, utility services management, a smart home where there are so many IoT devices and how they are embracing chain. Then comes smart healthcare. Healthcare is another segment where IoT is embraced big time because we don't have as many doctors and as many nurses to monitor each and every individual patient. So there are technologies that are coming in to monitor patients. For example, today we have these COVID is very prevalent in the world today, and there are oximeters that can measure the amount of oxygen in your bodies. If you get admitted in a hospital where IoT is implemented, they connect an oximeter to you all the times. They monitor the oximeter readings of all the patients from a centralized dashboard or console. And when the oximeter reading goes below a given particular threshold, they send a nurse or a doctor immediately to you to support it. So healthcare has advanced because of embracing IoT, and blockchain also comes to support some of these use cases where assume a case where the patient dies. Somebody wants to know whether the hospital provided the relevant support to that particular patient and whether they monitored the oxygen readings continuously. So with blockchain, there is you can go back in time and find out the steps taken by the hospital to support that particular patient. Let's look at supply chain management and how blockchain is embraced in a supply chain management infra vertical, where IoT is also getting embraced, right? So I'll show you a short video. So turn on your speakers and let's watch this video.
The Internet of Things continues to grow at a rapid rate. Sensors and devices are becoming more commonplace to communicate information. In business networks where data such as location, temperature, or other properties need to be shared, a permissioned blockchain ledger can help create a tamper-evident record. This opens up new ways of automating business processes among partners without having to set up a costly, centralized IT infrastructure, and all participants have access to the same data. Let's look at how supply chains benefit when data is shared through a permissioned blockchain. The IoT-enabled package transmits required status information as it passes through multiple carriers. The business contract specifies the conditions that must be met during the shipment from the factory to the grocery store, and all parties must adhere to the terms of the contract. A temperature sensor embedded in the package stores the data locally and sends it to the blockchain through the Watson IoT platform at waypoints upon receiving connectivity. Information is shared across all peers. In this example, both Carrier 1 and Carrier 2 met the contractual obligations and the shipment arrived at its final destination without exposure to excess temperatures. Using blockchain allowed all business partners to access the same temperature data without requiring central control. The result? A happy customer with peace of mind about the food in his or her cart.
So what was covered in this video? So they gave us an example of how blockchain plays a role in supply chain management. In fact, this is the biggest industry that is embracing blockchain today because of online sales. Today, most items are delivered. People have started embracing online methods for, especially during COVID times. More purchases are happening online. So one of the expectations of the customers is the quality of items that are getting shipped online, especially food items, because food items have an expiry date and they are perishable. And not only that, food items also have to be maintained in a specific temperature, right from the time it is packaged to the time where it gets delivered to the customer. Be it, for example, poultry. Today you can order poultry, fish, chicken or meat online, you can order vegetables online. For the food to be non-perishable, it has to be maintained at a particular temperature. And this is a smart contract because the the person who's packing it tells that this particular good has to be maintained in particular temperature till the time it goes to the customer. And there are so many entities who are coming in between. There are a number of carriers. For example, the product produce might have been grown in some remote near Tirunelveli or Madurai, Nagercoil, gets shipped all the way to place in Chennai. So there may be multiple carriers who are putting those goods. And in IoT enabled infrastructure, for example, you can put smart chip on the large package where you are putting all the produce, and that goes through multiple places. And the chip can record information related to the temperature and at different points in time during different stages of the travel. And as a consumer, if you get sick when consuming something, then you can go back and audit the temperature that levels of that particular package at different points in time. So it's very easy to do that in a blockchain-enabled supply chain management infrastructure. When sitting in India, it's very good to visualize these use cases. But in developed countries, most of the goods are reaching the stores through IoT-enabled networks. So they have sensors to monitor the temperature and the pressure, quality of the packaging, the leak related information. There are so many sensors that are available as part of the packaging, and they monitor and collect a lot of data at different points in time. They go from one carrier to another to the warehouse, and from the warehouse it gets again distributed to the different retail stores. So IoT sensors are embraced today, and many of them also have started adopting blockchain because blockchain simplifies the smart contract management. Blockchain simplifies maintaining, storing, and retrieving data. Blockchain makes it simplified uh, auditing the data that is stored in different places, right, in different ledgers. So that's why it's getting a unique role in a supply chain. This is one of the biggest use cases of blockchain in an IoT-enabled network. Then comes smart parking system. The smart parking system is reasonably easy to understand. Imagine that the Greater Chennai Corporation is operating an integrated smart parking system. You have parking facilities available in Nagar, you have parking facilities available in T Nagar, Tambaram, all the metro railway stations. So there are parking facilities available throughout the city, and there are different contractors who are maintaining each of those parking facilities, because the contractor who is managing in T Nagar will be different from the contractor who is managing it in Anna Nagar. So there are different contractors who are managing these different parking facilities. To top it, there is parking facility available in shopping complexes and shopping malls. Imagine that somebody has to introduce a smart parking system similar to like FASTag or tolls. Today, FASTag simplifies toll collection. In fact, recently I made a trip to Madurai, and it's the first time trip with FASTag. And the waiting time, the different toll booths come down dramatically. In the past, I used to spend at least 10 minutes in every toll collection plaza. But with FASTag, it's like a fraction of a minute or like a few seconds, less than 30 seconds wait time in each of those toll booths. So the FASTag tremendously simplifies the operation. And I don't have to search for cash or coins, and there is no transaction involved in the COVID time. I don't even to lower my glass. I can do just zip through the toll plaza without even communicating, interacting with any personnel, right? So FASTag simplifies toll collection. Similarly, if let's imagine a world where we have smart parking system. Parking is a nightmare in places like Pinagar or shopping. And imagine that the Greater Chennai Corporation is making an integrated smart parking system available. So how does it embrace blockchain? So the different there will be a different parking service providers in different geographies, be it T Nagar or Nagar, and each of them will be maintaining a small private blockchain. So they'll have equivalent of ledgers, but they are all digitized. There are sensors that read your car registration number, and you get automatically charged by that person. And that person has to give a commission to the Greater Chennai Corporation, because the Greater Chennai Corporation is responsible for maintaining the roads and maintaining the quality of the parking facilities. That they also provide some kind of a governance, right? So the local parking service providers, they maintain a ledger. They have a blockchain. They keep track of information like when the car was parked, when the car was taken away, what was the registration of the car, probably information related to the car, like the color of the car that was parked, and your own personal information, the person who parked the car, because there may be some theft or crime that happens in that particular locality, and they have to trace that back to the people who were there in the particular locality. Right? So they also have to keep track of personal information. So all that information will be maintained in a local blockchain in that particular geography. The integrated smart parking system may not be interested in all those nitty-gritty details. All they may be interested is how much time a person parked and what is the commission amount that they have the local parking service provider has paid to the Greater Chennai Corporation. Right? So the parking service provider, local parking service provider, is connected to a public ledger. The public ledger, for example, you may have to validate whether that registration number is a genuine registration number, because somebody may have a hooked up registration number put in the car, and you have to validate whether it's an authorized registration, valid registration number. And that's the reason why you have to collect details like the make, manufacturer, and all of those details for that car. Because as you enter all of that information, because with a surveillance camera, you can detect all of that information and you can populate your local blockchain network with those information, right? And you can also validate that with a public ledger. Imagine RTO office is putting the information available in a public ledger, and you can go and validate the credibility of the car registration information, right? So one, Greater Chennai Corporation may be collecting some commission for maintaining that parking infrastructure. Number two, the local parking service provider has to validate identity of the person who's parked and the identity of the car itself, right? So all of that is made possible with blockchain, which gets embraced in a smart parking system. Today, people talk about smart communities, and smart communities obviously have smart parking infrastructure, and blockchain plays a huge role in block in an IoT infrastructure that is embraced in a smart parking system, right? So that's an example of a use case where blockchain as well as IoT technologies are used. Then comes utility service management. This is the key use cases in an IoT-enabled network where there is a lot of utility infrastructure deployed in different places. Even, for example, in a country like India, there is water pipes that are going underground. There is drainage pipes that are going underground, and it's very difficult to keep track of that infrastructure. It's very easy to keep track of an over-the-ground infrastructure, but it's very difficult to keep track of something that is maintained underground. For example, in a locality where I have a property, there is drainage water getting to the metro water pipe. So there is pollution of metro water, and these folks are finding it very difficult to debug and identify the root cause because there is no sensors available to detect where there is water leak, or there is no sensor available to detect where there is drainage water leak. Right? If they have proper sensors available, then it's very easy to find where the water is leaking, metro water is leaking, or where the drainage water is leaking. In the absence of it, what they are doing is they are digging holes in different places along the metro water network. It's more like a trial and error of troubleshooting the problem. If they get lucky, they will identify where the leak is happening. But unfortunately, they are not lucky, so they are spending the last 2 weeks in digging holes in different places along the metro water pipeline to find the leak. So utility service management becomes simplified when they embrace IoT, because you have sensors to find the quality of the water in different places of the metro water network. Or you can also have sensors that detect leaks in the network, because the pressure value will differ in the place where there is a leak. So you can easily find out where the leak is happening in a utility service network. And this is true for electrical grid, power supply, or even gas. There are some countries where the gas is not sent through cylinders. They have pipelines carrying gas, right? So the utility service management becomes very easy when you have IoT. And here is an example of how water quality is managed using IoT as well as blockchain. So Volga River project is a popular project in Russia. They have this water pollution problem in a river. So they want to find out exactly where the water pollution. Imagine a river like Kuam River, right? Today, so many people are dumping garbage and drainage and industrial waste into the Kuam River. if you want to find out where poor river, where exactly the cause for pollution is, you can embrace a technology like this. So they have built a drone that floats in a river water, and it is solar powered, so you don't have to run a power line. So it's solar powered, and it has sensors to detect the quality of water in different places along the river. So since they implemented this, in fact, they claim that the water pollution has gone down significantly because the people are afraid that somebody is monitoring the quality of water, and they may be found and they may be penalized for causing pollution, right? So what they do is they float, this drone is floating in the water, and there are sensors connected to the drone. So the drone is capturing readings related to the water temperature as well as the quality of the water. So the quality of the water is measured as the drone floats around in the different parts of the river. And all that information is transmitted using a 4G enabled modem. So there is a 4G modem in the drone, which continuously sends that information to a centralized blockchain called Robonomics. Robonomics is a cloud provider for IoT with blockchain support. So all the results that are coming from this drone is stored in the Robonomics blockchain, and it gets audited at different points in time. So there are applications that are running in that cloud infrastructure, which looks at the information stored in the blockchain. So the application is also participating in the blockchain so that it can receive dates related to the quality, right? So the application can read that information and share it with interested parties. Let us look at the different interested parties, right? Obviously, the corporation will be interested to find. There'll be researchers who will be interested to get data, real world data about water pollution, right? So they'll be interested in the water quality. There'll be researchers. There'll be special interest groups. There'll be like, for example, there are groups that are today in Chennai. There are groups that are putting together cleaning the ponds and maintaining the ponds. There are special interest groups that are interested to know the quality of the water. And obviously, the people in that particular locality will also be interested in it, right? So they can open an app to find out the water quality in that particular part of their geography, right, where the river flows through. So there are multiple interested parties. They can all get subscribed to this blockchain. They can register and get subscribed to this private chain and get dates related to the quality of the water in the Volga River. So they implemented this project and they see a increase in the water quality, a drop in the pollution levels, because people, it becomes easy for people to monitor. So there is a popular quote: "What gets measured gets improved." Right. So when you monitor and measure something, then automatically it becomes better because there are multiple eyes seeing the problem. There are people who are either avoiding the problem or solving the problem. So blockchain and IoT finds a use case in utility service management. So this is a very simplistic use case. There are other complicated use cases where you can maintain electrical grids or atomic power generation grids using the IoT-enabled sensors that are storing information chain. A similar use case for the home infrastructure where you have a smart home. And in fact, people will be thinking, oh, so there are so many devices that are enabled with the internet. Yes, in fact, in several countries, people are embracing IoT technologies for smart home use cases, be it from light bulb to thermostat to motion sensor for security related reasons to water leak detector to cameras that are generating feeds. There are fire alarms. Right? Those also have become smart. In the past, whenever there is a fire alarm related to fire alarm itself becomes faulty, you will not even notice it. But today they have sensors put in the fire alarm to check if the fire alarm is functioning properly, right? As simple as whether the battery has enough charge, the fire alarm, right? So there are sensors all over the home, and each of those sensors are collecting data. Let me give, assume that there is a smart home where low lights are controlled with the mobile app. There are sensors that you put your imprint to open the door. the sensor detects your retina to before it allows you access to the home, right? Assume that smart home infrastructure is completely embraced and you are going out on a vacation. Accidentally, you have ordered something on Amazon or so, and probably it got delayed. So you went on a vacation and you have to make somebody to collect the package. So what you can do in a blockchain enabled network is assuming that you have gathered thumbprint and retina scan of your neighbor, you can open your mobile phone app and allow your neighbor to open the gate for the person to drop the package, or you can even participate. Assume in a world, Amazon is also participating in a blockchain network, and they have thumbprints and retina scan of all their delivery boys. So with your app, you can allow the delivery boy to open the front gate and drop the package near your door, residence door, and come back and lock the gate, right? So, and you can obviously monitor all of that in using a surveillance camera. So you can provide restricted access to people when you are not inside your home with blockchain. Specifically helps in identity management. In addition to keeping track of the data generated by the different sensors, you can also allow the blockchain system to validate the identity of people and restrict entry or exit of people into your facility. I don't know how many of you are aware of even India has multi-level security when you into an apartment community. They are like gated communities, right? So there is some one security person who is sitting in the front gate, who will get all of your information, name, phone number, PAN card detail or identity details, and then he'll let you in. When you walk into the community, there are like multiple blocks, and each of those blocks will have a bunch of security people on the floor who will actually gather that information. They have a ledger where they make you write all that information before they allow you to go and meet your friend or family member in that community. Imagine Amazon delivery guy has to go through two security points, or Zomato food delivery guy having to go through two security points to come to your home to deliver the food package, right? In a blockchain enabled community or a smart home, smart community, you can you will not even have security personnel. There will not be the gates will be automatically manned by IoT sensors, right? The Zomato food delivery guy will come and put his thumbprint and say that he is from Zomato. The IoT enabled network will validate his credentials with the Zomato's blockchain, because Zomato will have information related to all the delivery boys, their fingerprint, retina scan, that. Your smart gate will validate the credentials with Zomato first. Then it'll send a notification to an app in your mobile phone. A guy from Zomato has come to deliver a food package that you ordered, right? So approve or deny. So when you say approve, the person can walk into your ready and deliver the food package in your home. Such an infrastructure is available in developed worlds, to developed countries today. Probably it will take a while for it to come to India, but IoT as well as blockchain. Blockchain is today used as an more for experimental purposes at this point. They have not reached the stage where it's like widely deployed in home use cases, but these technologies are getting experimented. Go to YouTube and look for smart home, blockchain, IoT use where the technology gets explained. Then last but not the least is smart healthcare, right? You can monitor vital statistics or information related to a patient by using health gadgets like Fitbit. You can have special purpose sensor that is heart rate, oxygen levels, blood pressure of a patient. And you can provide remote healthcare services. In a COVID situation, the patient doesn't even have to come to the hospital to avail the services. The doctor can remotely diagnose the patient who is having non-COVID issues, right? They can be remotely diagnosed and treatment can be provided by the doctor. So smart health, IoT enables smart healthcare. And when you talk about healthcare, most critical information that gets shared is details for the personal details and your health related details. In fact, these are supposed to be very confidential, right? Health information is a very confidential information, and today hospital networks have your health information. They call it as health profile. Your health profile, you assume that you are a frequent visitor to Apollo. Apollo has information related to your health. So they call it as patient's health profile. They store the health profile. Technically speaking, they cannot monetize that. But if you provide consensus, select information can be shared with research institutions, pharmaceutical industries, right? Let me give you an case. For example, in most people have health insurance today, and the health insurance providers are spending money. If you are not maintaining your health properly, the insurance providers have to spend money on you, right? Whatever subscription insurance premium that you pay, the healthcare providers have to spend back on you if you are not maintaining your health. And some people are good, they have proper exercise routine, they eat good food, so they maintain a good health profile. They don't go and visit hospitals often. But some people don't take care of their health, so the insurance companies have to spend more on such people, right? So today, what happens in developed countries is by using information produced by your Fitbit gadget, smartwatch, or your mobile device. For example, if you're looking at your mobile phone for 3 hours a day, you are prone to get some kind of an eye. You may even have other problems, but at the minimum, you will have some eye problems, right? So your phone is constantly keeping track of data related to how long you are watching your phone on a given day or a given week. So all of that information gets shared with an insurance service provider. And insurance service provider is giving concession with the insurance premium if you maintain a good health. So if you prove to the insurance provider you are walking at least like 1,000 steps a day, you are climbing stairs 10 times a day, or if you are doing proper cardio workouts, or if you are eating good food. So today, some of these sensors also, like the pictures that you are taking on your mobile phone, the kind of food that you eat, the restaurants that you go to. If you go to McDonald's 2 times a week versus if you go to McDonald's like once a month, it makes a difference on your health, right? So the insurance service provider is gathering all these insights that are maintained, which is maintained as part of your health profile, and using that to offer attractive insurance packages to you, right? So the health profile is of interest to hospitals, insurance companies, payment provider, if you are using digital currencies, right? The payment provider, research institutions, supply chain, the pharmaceutical supply chain, right? If more people are going to McDonald's, which means there'll be a spike in the cardio-related problems. So which means cardio-related drugs to be sent to a particular. So all these different stakeholders are interested in your health profile. And with blockchain, your health profile can be easily maintained. The different stakeholders can be validated before information gets shared with the different stakeholders. Similarly, if somebody wants to update your health profile, they also have to be validated before they can come and update something into your health record. Okay? So blockchain has a utility in smart healthcare as well. So those are the different use cases that I wanted to share with you. There are a bunch of platforms that are available if you really want to experiment something. So Ethereum, Ripple, EOS, these are platforms which offer a commercial version of blockchain, which means you have to subscribe to their pay money and subscribe to their services to play around with blockchain, embrace blockchain related services. EOS, for example, offers, it's a very recent entrant. They are open source. They also have an open source version. If you want to customize blockchain for your particular use case, you can use EOS. Open Ledger is specifically for finance, for supply chain related transactions. So open for some of the use cases that I talked about in today's session, Open Ledger can be used for managing IoT enabled networks using blockchain. Ripple is for financial transactions, and Hyperledger is funded by Linux, so it's open source. You can download Hyperledger also and play around with it to come up with blockchain related use cases. So those are the different platforms that are available in blockchain. And I promise to show you the impact of blockchain in today's business, right? So Gartner Hype Cycle is available for different technologies. And this is an example of how Gartner visualizes blockchain adoption in different verticals. For example, blockchain and IoT, it's still in innovation stage, right? So it's still in innovation stage, which means there is so much potential for research and there is so many potential for newer applications. When compared to blockchain in banking, for example, it has gone to trough of disillusionment, which means people have experimented with it and they have tried, already developed applications, and they know what the reality is when compared to blockchain in banking and investment. But blockchain and IoT is still a hype. There is so much scope for research and innovation. So with that, I'll pause for questions. We'll use the available time for Q&A. I already see a raised hand. Let's see. Register name in Zoom. Oh, okay, good. So if you have any questions, you can shoot the questions to me. Related to blockchain, IoT, blockchain related use cases. To give you a recent example, I was looking for research related topics for a friend of mine, and the friend of mine is doing research on edge computing. So when I go and do a search on edge computing on IEEE, there are at least some 1,000 papers on edge computing, which means edge computing is already like beaten to death. But when I do a search for mobile edge computing, the number comes down. Okay. When I do a search on mobile edge computing, the count comes to a few hundreds. When I do mobile edge computing and blockchain, there's only like 60 or 70 articles that I could see in IEEE. So which means blockchain along with mobile edge computing or along with the technologies like IoT provides a lot of scope for research. Ma'am, so there is a question from Mr. Jivanantham, WSN IoT related research. So can you please explain to me or expand what WSN is? It wireless sensors, or what does WSN represent? Yeah, okay, good. So if you're talking about wireless sensor network using IoT, then UOS can be used for managing, for example, supply chains with blockchain. The example that I showed to you using a video, right? So you have sensors, IoT sensors in different places, and you are gathering details related to the temperature of that particular good or commodity, and you can keep track of that, store it in an IoT enabled blockchain, and you can get different instances. You can look at the temperature at different instances and different points into the network. So in fact, if your goal is to use blockchain and IoT, and if it is a non-supply chain related use case, I would recommend Hyperledger for that, because it's easy. Because EOS is still more towards supply chain, which means they have represent entities like the producer of a good, the carrier, the warehouse, the retail store. All of those terminologies may be irrelevant for the use case that you are going to experiment with, right? So if it's a generic IoT use case, doesn't have anything to do with supply chain, then you can use Hyperledger itself. But if it's towards supply chain, then you can use EOS. What is the stand on India about blockchain? So RBI obviously has not approved like Bitcoin specifically as a currency, right? So there are some vendors who are supporting Bitcoin currencies. If you are looking at blockchain as a technology, it is still in research, I would say. Some of the financial institutions are looking at embracing blockchain for maintaining their ledgers. So, for example, in telecom industry, the industry that I represent, I'm from telecom industry. We are not looking at blockchain specifically to solve a big problem for us, because probably the problem that blockchain will solve for us is storing and retrieving data related to customers and customer transactions, or storing and sharing information with other service providers. We call it as federation of network. When a user roams from one network to another network, uh, for example, you are coming from US, AT&T is a leading service provider in US, and Bharti Airtel is a service provider in India. So the same mobile phone can be used in a roaming mode in India. And what happens is, month on month, these service providers share information related to the usage of a given customer in that particular network with the home service provider. So that is called a federation of network. So you can share information related to roaming using blockchain. Today, it is already shared in some format, right? So we have CDRs, call detailed records, using which we share information with other service providers, but they are inefficient. With blockchain, they can easily share some of that information. Different service providers can come into a private blockchain network and they can share information with each other. So some of those use cases are getting explored by service providers in India. But pretty much all leading bank financial vendors or banking vendors, they are looking at blockchain for keeping track of digital ledgers. Almost all the wallet-based payments, right? Paytm, Google Pay, all these guys have started looking at embracing blockchain. They have actually implemented blockchain in some form, but not like smart contracts or the distributed apps. Those are not available yet. Good question. Any other questions? Okay. Probably I'll ask the question. So what is something that so there are how many people are still active? Oh wow! So the participation has gone up. So phenomenal. Normally participation dips towards the end of the segment, and so the participation has gone up, which means people are still interested. So the question to you is, what is one new thing that you learned today in the last 1.5 hours, right? So type it in the chat window. What is one new thing that you learned today? Because you have spent your valuable time to join, and especially it's a Monday morning first thing, right? Productive time. So have you used it wisely? What is one new thing that you learned today by attending this session? You can type it in the chat window or unmute and speak out. I will also share the deck with all of you through Dr. Kavita.
Sir, thank you,
So
sir. Dear participants, interested participants can provide feedback about this session. If anybody interested, please. Participants?
Good afternoon, ma'am.
If any of you interested, please can provide your feedback about this session.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am. The session was very useful, ma'am. Informative also. Those who doesn't have the basic knowledge about the department also, they were able to understand this, ma'am. In that way, the sir has provided the presentation. So very useful for everybody. Those belong to all the department. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Glad to know that. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, sir. I am Dr. R. Rajeshwari. The session was very useful, sir. We came to know how the blockchain technology is used for even farmers also. Similarly, I want to know whether it can be useful for this COVID-19 vaccine supply chain management.
True. In fact, that's a great use case. I'm not sure if our government is thinking about it, but it's easy to track people who are vaccinated or not vaccinated. Similarly, the storage and transporting of vaccines to different localities. I did not think about it. It's a great use case to implement using blockchain. In fact, it will simplify the process of vaccination and tracking people who are vaccinated or who are not vaccinated. And it also simplifies the job of tracking the vaccines, right? Where are they? How much quantity is available? How much quantity have to be manufactured?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rajeshwari ma'am.
Thank you.
Any of you?
Excuse me, sir. Can you able to hear my voice, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can ask, sir.
I am Dr. Srinivasan from Jain deemed to be University, Bangalore. Really, this blockchain emerging with IoT, that platforms, whatever the platforms that you mentioned, and the where actually this type of blockchain is applied, real time environment, where it is because of we actually I know just a little bit confusion where it is applied, but you clearly explained in healthcare systems and in how to find out that the quality of water and that everything that you explained clearly. So this session is highly knowledgeable and more informative. And one more request, sir, if you have to give any demo on platforms, that whatever the mentioned platforms, suppose if you give a small demo on those type of platform means it is very most useful to our faculty members, that we will forward those things to the students. Thank you very much.
Definitely, that's a good input, sir. So I'll incorporate it when I do the session again. By the way, the Ethereum demo is available for viewing. So go and if you go and do a search on Ethereum blockchain demo, so it's available. Similarly, Hyperledger also, there should be a lot of demos available because it's open source and supported by Linux Foundation. But I definitely incorporate that into the session again. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Srinivasan, sir.
So if you have any further feedback, you can share with me offline. So my email ID is svailrajan@gmail.com. Probably I'll type it in the chat window also so that it's available for you. Thanks to Jivanandam sir and Deepa ma'am for sharing the feedback in the chat window. I want to summarize by saying that today we covered what blockchain is, what are the characteristics of blockchain, what are some of the benefits of blockchain, and we also looked at how blockchain simplifies some of the use cases in an IoT environment. So there are different entities that are participating in an IoT environment. So blockchain helps us to maintain security, helps us to manage your data, helps us to process transactions fast, helps us to maintain smart contracts. So we looked at a variety of these capabilities using different use cases that are enabled by both blockchain and IoT. So hope you found the session useful. Thank you so much for the feedback. And over to you, ma'am, Dr. Kavita.
Thanking you, sir. We are extremely happy for your august presence on this workshop on blockchain technology insight and its applications. And our participants were richly benefited of your excellent lectures, like started from what is blockchain technology, how does it work, benefits, and finally, why this blockchain technology is important in IoT-enabled networks and today's business. We thank you once again and hope we'll have many more programs in future, sir. Thanking you, sir. Dear participants, thank you, sir. Dear participants, hope usefully spent your time and also benefited from this workshop. And I request to fill the feedback for your presence. Link will be available only in chat box. So next session will be started by 1 p.m. sharply. Provide your feedback.
Madam, in sometime that link is not copying, madam, in the chat box, from the chat box. If I click,
I'll send it in privately, sir.
So that you kindly put it in the chat box also. Sorry, WhatsApp group also.
WhatsApp. If it is not working means I'll send it to you in WhatsApp, sir. Okay, I have posted my feedback link, session 1's feedback link. Please. Thank you all.
Thank you.
ஐயோ இந்த ஃபீட்பேக் லிங்க் வராது எனக்கு இப்பதான் லாகின் பண்ணேன் வந்துச்சேன் ஒரு மெயிலில் வாட்ஸ்அப்
ma'am?